are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to It's Alive Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they're ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I am your host, the outlaw, Dr. H.R. Smokenstein, THD, and with me as always is my very own scream queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the bride of Smokenstein, the hard expert, the guts and gore, the gorgeous, sexy Amy Rose.
Hi.
Oh, and we're going 100% all in Irish this month. This is our month, people. And
women.
And women's month. It's also
but
women's
most
month.
importantly, Irish women.
Irish
I'm joking.
women. That's
all
what it should
women.
Be from now on,
all
just
women.
Irish women.
No, all women.
And on the Horrorverse Network, that's all we're doing this month, where you are covering on Playing with Bones,
Not all Irish women.
but all women.
All women. 2 Irish women, yeah.
And on the rest of the shows, we will be talking about different kinds of goblins and ghouls that we have in this lovely country.
God knows there's a shitload of them.
Huh?
So God knows there's a shitload of goblins and ghouls.
No, we are going to start off right now with saying there is a lot of the Irish language in this story, with place names specifically. The Irish language is extremely difficult. It is not phonetically correct. You can't work out the Irish language by breaking it down phonetically.
And even at that, it depends what part of the country you're from is how it's pronounced.
But that's it. The pronunciation changes from region to region. So this can be difficult. I am an Irish speaker.
You are.
But still place names would be difficult to say. And again, I'm an Irish speaker in the sense of I went to school. I did all my schooling through the Irish language. So that was, what age am I now? 37? That was like 20 years ago. Since I was speaking it consistently every single day. So while I can still read it, I can still write it, I can still understand when you talk to me in Irish. Yeah. My Irish speech is a lot slower than what it used to be.
Yeah, I'd have to think.
I got to warm up to it. Once I get into the flow of talking to somebody, I'd be okay. But it's what my teachers would call broken Irish. Would be how I'd speak now. I would be a direct translation of English.
That's what was drummed out of us in school. You never think in English if you want to speak Irish. And I presume it goes for any language.
But I'm so used to speaking in English that I kind of just naturally...
It's because the Irish, it's backwards as well. Like, and if you want to say that you're sorry, that you know you're sad, it's not I am sad. It's the sadness is on me. Do you know, it's very different.
It can be confusing, which is what I'm trying to teach my kids every day when we try and do the Irish homework, and they're looking at me like, "What the hell is this?" But we're going to try our best. I had an idea, right?
Yeah.
And the thing I reckon is with some of these pronunciations. Confidence is key here, right?
Oh yeah, if you sound like you're saying it right.
So I reckon you go all bogger when you don't know what you're doing.
A lot of and
what are we talking? We're talking about a place. What's the name of the place we're talking about today?
Slavaverty.
Slavaverty.
Oh, perfect.
I know Slavaverty well, boy.
Just get a few.
Just down the road there. I had a few pints there with the boys down in Slavaverty last day. It was great.
Perfect.
Took the tractor home. We were grand.
The what? Oh, the tractor.
So that's what we're going to do when we get stuck in a word. We're just going to lean right into the farmer and go full culture and do our best, all right?
I'll try.
There are probably other people listening to this and they're hearing my accent and hearing me talking. They're like, how much more fucking Irish can you get?
Oh, if we went up the mountains about 10 minutes that way, we would not be able to understand. No. When I first moved to Kerry, it was tough going, man.
See, the thing about it is we speak really fast, especially like the townies like me. We do have an accent, but we talk really quick on top of it. So it's hard for you to follow exactly. It's something I'm trying to be conscious of when we're recording, but it's hard because I'm excited about what I'm talking about. So I just go hell for leather.
I never realised we spoke Irish until we started to have a lot more kind of foreign friends, and they'd be like, "Amy, slow down." And it's like, am I talking fast? I'm sure I'm sorry. Like they can understand me. It's just that I'm speaking too fast for them. Like,
yeah. So it is hard. But we are going to get to, before we get to the main story today, we got to actually look at a lot of Irish mythology, a lot of Irish belief systems pre-Christianity, because the guy we're going to talk about today originates from that general area. And I think, we do have a lot of Irish myths and legends here. Shitloads of them. And I mean, I've always said there's movies and TV shows here that need to be made.
It's a gold mine.
Cuchulainn. How Cuchulainn has not ended up in a movie yet is just mind-boggling to me.
I still stick by it that I think that some people, that it might be a thing of that they're afraid to make it too like fairy tale, too stereotypically
Fionn and
Irish.
the Fianna could be done identically to Ragnar and the Vikings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know?
Yeah,
'Cause if you
I think
look
people
at-
need to look at it like that.
If you look at Ragnar's real story, that dude pulled Lagertha from a tower where she was being guarded by like a serpent.
and the other wife lived in a harp.
His surname, Lothbrok,
Yeah.
means shaggy breeches. They were basically pants made of hair that were impenetrable for the serpent's fang. So it would protect him from the serpent's fang. Hair.
Why didn't
Hairy
he wear
pants.
them when he was thrown into the pit of snakes?
Well, this
though?
was a bit later.
All right.
But and that's
He
when
lost the
things are more
pants.
real. So I mean, because I do believe, obviously, he was there's like proof that there was a Ragnar.
Oh yeah.
But they reckon that it might be a collection of different stories. Same with Fionn and the Fianna. They believe that there was most likely some Irish hero who was around that time, but the legend just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing around these
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah.
Do you know? So, but what's your favorite?
My favorite is
Well,
Nera
start.
in the Hill of Cruachan.
Which we covered day one on the very first Mini Monsters.
I love it because it's just creepy.
And
It
it's
is
there.
a really creepy story. Like,
If you want to hear it, you can go to Patreon. It is up there for free. You'd have to go back a bit. Go to the Mini Monsters collection. I have everything in nice collections. I'm very neat and tidy.
he's very
that way.
organized.
So if you go to collections, head down, you'll find Nera and the Cruachan sometime.
Hill of Cruachan.
It was probably last year. We probably used it for last Paddy's Day, to be fair.
I would think so.
My favourite story is basically anything to do with Cuchulainn, but I do love the whole his origin story.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
Cuchulainn, if you don't know about this, his birth name was Setanta. And he was brought up by two women, I believe, wasn't he?
As far as I know, he was.
I think he had to be hidden, and he was brought up by two women. But eventually, he wanted to play hurling with the other boys and all this, and he got involved, and he starts playing hurling with the two boys. Now, this is a cut down, very quick version of the story. It's more drawn out than this.
Need to know, kind of.
But
Yeah.
he's playing at the King's Court, playing
At Cullen's Court.
at Cullen's Court. He's playing hurling with the boys, but he is much smaller than the rest of the boys, so they don't actually think he's going to be capable of it. But because he's kind of like a superhero of Irish legends.
Yeah.
He was obviously more powerful than them, faster than them, better than them. And in one case, everyone when the match is over, the hurling match is over, everybody goes in to eat. But Setanta stays outside playing a little bit more. And Cullen doesn't know this, and he releases his dogs, his hounds, to watch the court. And coo in Irish is hound. So hound in Irish is coo.
Yeah.
That's how, and while he's playing, these hounds see him and attack, because obviously it's like, there's not supposed to be anyone out here. That's why the hounds are out to protect the place. And all he had was his hurley and his slitter. A slitter is a ball similar to a baseball, and it's what's used in hurling. And he fired the slitter at the hound with his
Did it
hurl.
go down the dog's
It went down the
throat?
dog's throat and he
Yeah.
choked. But it was Cullen's favourite hound. And Cullen was distraught about this, but Setanta stepped up and said, look, you got pups here. It's going to take a while to train them. But until you have those pups trained, I'm your hound. So he became known as Coo Cullen.
Hound of Cullen, basically.
And he would protect that area until the pups were grown, and then he'd go on to have a lot more stories about him. Great myths, great.
I always found it funny that that when he went into his war frenzy, that the only way of calming this man down was to throw a few naked women in front of him, and that's how you got Cuchulainn out of his war frenzy.
Well, it does work. But essentially, this guy was the Rambo of Irish mythology,
Absolutely.
the one-man army. If you had a problem, you called Cuchulainn, and he came in and he kicked everyone's ass.
He had really cool weapons as well. He did
He's the Irish Chuck Norris.
the toe spear that could only be fired if the rest of you was underwater, and you had to stick your leg out of the water. The rest of you had to be underneath, and you had to put the spear in between your toes, your big toe and the one beside your big toe, and then you fired the spear. But the spear would only work if you fired it like that.
I believe
killed
that
his
there
son.
is a very similar story in Norse mythology about Ragnar Lothbrok's children.
Oh yeah.
That one of them similarly had to fire his spear with his foot. I don't know if it was Ivor.
Was it at his son?
It could have been Ivor. I'm not 100% sure about that. No, I do.
How would Ivor have done that?
At the time, I was 100% like, I was obsessed with all this stuff. So I was listening to a lot of different stories, and it's hard to differentiate one story from the other when you've only listened to them kind of once,
Yeah.
There's a good podcast about it, actually. It's called Saga Thing. They're these two professors from America who teach Norse
The
history and Icelandic sagas,
yeah.
and they do one every week, and they're really entertaining. They're fun doing it, but
So you really have to listen.
it's like the Irish.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're doing your history podcast and we're talking about royalty,
Mm-hmm.
all these fuckers have the same fucking name.
Oh, the
Or
Louis
similar names.
does my
do you
head
know?
in. Yeah.
And it's hard to pick stuff out. And, it's hard to fucking pick between a Thorsten and a Thor and a Thor. There's just so many. They're so similar. And all the stories have such similar names going that it's hard to separate the stories sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But with this story in particular, we have to go all the way back. Right back to Book of Conquests shit. And the Book of Conquests is basically the origin of Ireland and the Irish people and where we came from before the Christians came in and fucked everything up and said, these aren't gods, they're just fairies.
Like literally when they call Ireland the land of giants, it's another word, another way. We were the land. The Fomorians were a race of giants, supposedly.
You're going to hear me bang on about this over and over and over and over again, but it was one of the big things that really pushed me into a pagan belief system was, whereas Christianity is forced down people's throats, like they have missionaries going from one place to the other saying, believe in Christ and we'll feed you. Poor African people and stuff like that. Pagans seem to have had the exact same idea at the exact same time with no contact with each other. So the Norse pagans and the Irish pagans, all our stories are almost identical. Same with, you could get the Greeks, you could get the Romans, you could get any of them, and all the European, they're called Indo-European paganism, and including the Indian areas. It's all really linked. And what I found fascinating was, in a time when you couldn't travel, when word of mouth wasn't really much of a thing, everybody had the same idea, to the point of all the gods have similar enough names, like close to that. Like, it is in like Thor and Argai have like T at the start of their name. But it's like Odin and Lu are very, very different names. I know our main god is named Lu. Hey, there's Odin,
L-U-G,
there's Thor, and there's Lu over there by the bar having a Guinness. Fuck. So we're going to go right back.
Yes.
And we're going to start with the two-a-day Dana. So you want to crack on with that, because we got a lot to get through. The first half of this show is going to be dense. It's going to be thick with Irish mythology. So if you're into Irish mythology and you're in the fucking St. Patrick's Day spirit, then stick around. This stuff is good. It's enjoyable. It's fun. And
but a different religion to poor old Paddy.
Huh?
Different religion though to Patrick.
Well,
he was
I'll
stamping
tell you,
this out,
I have
wasn't
a
he?
bit of a fucking thing with him. I don't celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I just celebrate being Irish that day, because as far as I'm concerned, he's the guy that came in here and fucked it all up on us. No, agreed. We forced him in here the first time. He came here as a slave the first time.
9 of the 9 hostages was supposed to be a great man though.
Because he was St. Patrick was
He's Welsh.
He's a Roman.
Welsh
We
Roman
took him
though.
from Wales. He was Roman. When the Romans were over in England,
Yeah.
we used to sneak in like the Vikings snuck in and raid
Yeah.
the place. So when we raid, we'd go in, we'd grab a few slaves, we'd grab some money and food and stock and stuff, and then we'd piss off back to Ireland. We did exactly what the Vikings were doing. That was our job too.
Okay.
And he was taken as a slave.
Okay.
And we brought him over here, and he was working as a slave. He was a shepherd. Yeah. And that's when he found God. And he spoke to God amongst the sheep.
The man was bored.
Which was obviously fucking the flock. But his flock was a genuine flock.
Oh yeah. Well, in fairness, yeah.
But so yeah, eventually he escaped, and then he decided to come back here to preach the word of God to save all the pagans.
Drive the
from
snakes
hell.
out, and who the snakes are basically a metaphor for the pagans.
Yep. So we're going to get cracked on with our how the snakes got here to begin with. So the two-a-day Dana,
So the
crack on with it.
two-a-day Danan. They are described as a supernatural race, much like idealized humans who are immune from aging and sickness and who have powers of magic. The most often attributed to the Tuatha De Danann are control over the weather and the elements and the ability to shapeshift themselves and other things. They are also said to control the fertility of the land. The tale, De Gaul and Shida, says the first Gaels had to establish friendship with the Tuatha De Danann before they could raise crops and herds. They live in the other world, which is described as either a parallel world or a heavenly land beyond the sea or underneath the Earth's surface.
Straight off the bat there, you can see the link to the other European religions of, it's more about praising Mother Nature than it is about an almighty God. There's multiple gods. They all have some job to do to make all this work and all this twist and turn. And so again, these links are huge for me in a time where links shouldn't have been happening. Yeah. Now, this part I love because this to me, I am constantly asked stuff like, well, if you're not a Christian, then where are you going to go when you die?
Well,
I got lots of places. I'm going to list them for you right now because it depends. You're not going to one place. I have a preference. I know where I want to go.
I know where I want to go. I don't know if is it the same place?
Oh, it's got to be. I'll get to it in a minute. We'll talk about it in a minute. So here are some of the Irish mythology underworld names or places you can go in the underworld. We got Tir Nahil, the other world. Tir Tarnagir, which is land of the promise or promised land. My choice, Tir Nanog, land of the young, land of the youth, which is told in a story about Oisin and Tir Nanog. Oisin is the son of Fionn McCool, who we will be talking about in a few minutes.
And Oisin meets St. Patrick as well.
Huh?
Oisin meets St. Patrick as well.
Is that when he comes back from Tir Nanog?
When he comes back from Tir Nanog.
Oh, he fucked up by doing that one, didn't he? Big mistake.
Big
Don't
time.
come back from Tir Nanog.
And if you do, you do not get off your horse.
No. There's Tir Fotuin, land under the wave. Tir Namio, which is land of the living. Magmail, plain of delight. Mag Findergat, the white silver plain. Mag Argatanel. Argahanel, sorry. The silver cloud plain. Mag Ildahuk, which is the multicolored plain, which is weird because Ildahuk to me meant off color.
To me it would mean kind of darkness. Yeah.
Magkuin, the gentle plain. The Érenn Abhartach, which is possibly the Isle of Apples. And if you remember, not long after we started this podcast, we talked about a cult that took place in Summer Isle, the little island off of Scotland. We had Lord Summer Isle and all that, and they were big about the apples, and they were all pagans. Now, I don't go about things the way they do. I don't burn people in giant wicker men. Well, if our numbers don't start rising, I might have to make a sacrifice. but
chickens to start with.
So if you don't want me to be going down for murder, you're going to listen more. So all these places, they're described as a supernatural realm where there is everlasting youth, beauty, health, abundance, and joy, and where time moves differently. And that sounds familiar. Sounds like something somebody else came up with hundreds of years later. What is it? What do they call it? It sounds heavenly, to be honest with you. But I'm going to get... It is the dwelling place of the gods, as well as certain heroes and ancestors. It was probably similar to the Elysium of Greek mythology, and both may have a shared origin in ancient Proto-Indo-European religion. The other world is elusive, but various mythical heroes such as Cuchulainn, Fionn, and Bran visited either through chance or after being invited by one of its residents. In Irish myth and later folklore, the festivals of Samhain and Bealtaine, that's how it's pronounced, the Americans, Bealtaine, the one you keep calling Bealtaine, that's Bealtaine. They are liminal times when contact with the other world is more likely. So, in 2 months' time, we got a chance to get that connection because Bealtaine is literally just May. When you do the Irish months, it's from January to December. It's Anar, Fiora, Morta, Braun, Bealtaine, Mehev, Ul, Lunasa is another big one. Lunasa, Manfor, Derafor, Samhain. Samhain isn't actually October.
And it's not Samhain.
Samhain is November. And then you have Nullig, which is Christmas. So Samhain is obviously I suppose because Halloween is the last day of October and the first
Exactly.
day of
Yeah,
November, but
yeah.
Samhain goes in that way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So in the tales, the other world is often reached by entering ancient burial mounds such as those at Brunaboina and Knockmeda. These were known as Shida, or otherworld dwellings, and were the dwellings of the gods, later called the Aes Shi or Dinashi, the otherworld folk. Irish mythology says that the gods retreated into the Shida when the Gaels took Ireland from them. In some tales, the otherworld is reached by going under the waters of pools, lakes, or the sea, or else by crossing the Western Sea. And it also opened up every Halloween. You could cross over into the other underworld through one of the sides or the Shida.
Yeah.
Every Halloween night, they would open up.
And that is also in the story
Of
of
Nera.
Nera and the Crewcorn.
Mhm.
Go check it out.
Yep.
Do you know what I did? What did kind of cross my mind here as well? Actually, do you know what? I'm going to wait a second because I think we mention it again later, and there's no point in me bringing it up right now, so I'll only bring it up again later. But the fact that, just keep in mind the fact that you got to go into the sea, go into pools and lakes of water to get to this place, and you're usually bought by a horse. If that doesn't give you a hint of what I'm on about,
I know what you're going to say.
look at more mini monsters. We've covered these guys too, but I'll talk about them in a few minutes. In Irish, Imrahama voyage tales. I'm just going to skip right over. I'm not even going to fucking try, man. A beautiful young underworld woman often approaches a hero and sings to him of this happy land. Sometimes she approaches him with an apple or the promise of her love in exchange for his help in battle. He follows her and they journey over the sea together and are seen no more. Their journey may be in a boat of glass, in a chariot, or on horseback. Usually a white horse, and in the case of the goddess Niamh of the golden hair, it's always a white horse.
Yeah.
Now, what I wanted to bring up there was we have talked about water kelpies. Talk about shelpies, is it? Is that the other one?
Shelpies. Yeah.
And they're horse-like creatures that
Skelpie, sorry.
Skelpies, where once you sit in them, they see water, they latch onto you and force you into the water with them.
Mhm.
Now, to cryptozoologists, they would see that as this is
Aggressive.
malevolent being is grabbing you, pulling you into the water and drowning you. What I think is quite possibly this being is saying, come with me to the other world. I'm going to bring you to Tiernan Og, and that's why you're being pulled into the water, because that's how you get there. Sometimes you can go through sides with your little mounds, little hills. You can go through water. You can going west in the water is a big one. So America could be the promised land.
It's probably because do they think that there was nothing west? Like, was it kind of like, well, if there's nothing over there, it has to be eventually get to
Possibly.
the other world? Like,
Possibly. Sometimes the heroes return after what he believes is a short time, only to find that all his companions are dead and he was actually been there for hundreds of years. That is the story of Oisin and Tiernan Og. What happens there is Oisin is approached, I believe, by Niamh, and promise. She basically says, "I love you. You can, we can be together, and we can be happy forever. We can be young forever, and we can live in this place where everything is great all the time. Only catch is, you got to come on your own, and you're never going to see any of your family and friends again." Well, at least not until they come on their way after death, if they come this direction.
Yeah.
He agrees and he goes over there. But eventually, after what feels like to him like 10 or 20 years, he starts to feel a bit lonely. He starts to miss his family. He starts to miss Fiona and the Fianna. Now, the Fianna means soldier or warrior, is the Irish word for warrior. And Fiona and the Fianna were like legendary warriors from this time, from the Fenian cycle.
It's a couple of 100 years after. Yeah.
And, to him,
Oh,
it was only
sorry,
a
I get you.
couple of decades.
Sorry, yeah.
So Niamh, he goes to Niamh and he says, "Look, I don't want to go back there permanently. I love you and I want to stay with you, but I need to go back and visit. I need to see him. I need to see that everyone's okay. I need to see that everyone's happy." And she said, "Okay, you can go on this one stipulation. Do not put a foot in the ground. Under no circumstances do you get off the horse. You stay on the horse, you go do what you got to do, and then you come right back." When Oisin gets here, he realizes that the 10 or 20 years he's been in Tiernan Og has actually been hundreds of years here.
Yeah.
And he gets back here and everyone he's ever known and loved is long gone. And this obviously upsets him. I don't know. I can't remember. Does he fall from the horse or does he climb off the horse to look at something or to go check something? But as soon as Oisin touches the ground, he ages all that time he's been missing. And he ages hundreds and hundreds of years and obviously dies. And doesn't go to Tir na Nog this time. He goes up, because we're going to talk again. There is other places. I'll mention a few other places soon. One that sounds extremely scary, but I understand it. It's like a waiting room. It's purgatory, I assume, is what it's supposed to be. But it creeps me out a small bit. We do have a Grim Reaper. But it's cool. We'll get to him. So where was I here? Sometimes the hero sets out on a quest and a magic mist descends upon him. He may find himself before an unusual palace and enter to find a warrior or a beautiful woman who makes him welcome. The woman may be the goddess Fand, and the warrior may be Mananahan MacLear or Lou. I love Lou.
Just say Lou.
Do you know the fucked up thing about Lou is? Do you know, this is crazy. I don't have this in the script, but this is the truth. I've looked this up. There is a belief among some mythological scholars that Lou is an aged Hercules. That Hercules left Greece, in his older age, and came here and became Lou. That they are the exact same person, 100% storyline and everything.
And does that make Lou a half god? So,
It's
isn't
something
Hercules
to
a half god?
I don't know, but it's something to do with his weaponry and his demeanor and the way he acted and stuff like that, and certain stories that are attributed to him. But there is some belief that he actually might have been Hercules.
Oh, class.
Yeah. However, even when the mortal manages to return to his own time and place, he is forever changed by his contact with the other world, which I pointed out because it's a longer, time works differently in these places. So here, we're about to get to our scary place that we have to go to. Yeah, it's not that bad. They make it sound bad by constantly calling it dark. In Irish myth, there is another otherworldly realm called Teach Dún, or House of Down, or House of the Dark One. Now, Down means brown. So I'm not too sure why it's called the Brown House, but I don't want to go to the
I don't want to go to the Brown House. It's anyway. They'd say dove as in for darkness and darker.
Yeah, we'll stick with Teach Dún. It is believed that the souls of the dead travel to the Teach Dún, perhaps to remain there forever, or perhaps before reaching their final destination in the other world, or before being reincarnated. So we got a couple of options ahead of us when we pass.
Oh, we
You
do.
know, we're not just going to one day. We might have to come back here and do this stuff again before they let us in. You know, I was like, no, you got to redo. Go back. Down is portrayed as a god of the dead and the ancestor of the Gaels. Teach Dún is commonly identified with Bull Rock and in
an islet
off the west coast of Ireland, which resembles a portal tomb. In Ireland, there was a belief that the souls of the dead departed westwards over the sea with the setting sun. So they're following the sun. That's what it is. Westward also being the direction in which the Phantom Island, anglicised as High Brazil, was portrayed or purported to be found. Now, if you've never heard of High Brazil, this is amazing. This place shows up on maps. Ancient maps will have High Brazil on it right next to Ireland. It's obviously not there now. You can't see it now. It's something that's supposed to appear and disappear randomly. It was, pop culture wise, it was used in the movie Eric the Viking, which starred an awful lot of the Monty Python guys. Very funny movie. But the Vikings actually end up in High Brazil and meet all these people, and it's essentially Tir na Nog.
Oh yeah,
it is. It's just another version of Tir na Nog, but it's just off of Ireland where you can actually see it.
There are maps from the 1600s, so there's one in particular from 1572, and High Brazil is there just off the coast of Galway.
And it has nothing to do with the other Brazil.
Oh no.
Just nothing. I don't know why it's called High Brazil, and High Brazil is the anglicised version.
But I mean, like we have the surname in Ireland, Brazil. Like,
oh
so,
yeah.
So it's
Anyway, your turn. Let's go.
It is. I need to come out on my Brazil information.
My fucking jaw hurts after saying all those words, to be honest with you.
So many of them are associated with specific places in the landscape, especially the side mounds, the ancient burial mounds and passage mounds, which are entrances to other world realms. The Tuatha De Danann can hide themselves with a fey fiada or a magic mist and appear to humans only when they wish to. In some tales, such as Baugh in Scáil, a king receives affirmation of his legitimacy from one of the Tuatha De Danann. In other tales, a king's right to rule is affirmed by an encounter with an otherworldly woman. It has been argued that the inauguration of Irish kings originally represented his ritual marriage to the goddess of the land. The Tuatha De Danann can also bring doom to unrightful kings. And that's something that can be seen in Scotland as well, as far as I know. The whole, like, the right to rule is affirmed by the goddess of the land.
But we have a specific place for this, don't we? There's a specific rock where the High King is crowned.
Yeah.
And obviously then they're married to the country, but the country is represented by a goddess named Érenn, where the name Éire comes from, which is the Irish for Ireland.
She was on our £5 note at one stage, wasn't she?
Was she?
Yeah.
Is that who that was?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Ah.
She was modelled after Lady Lavery, pretty sure. I think.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Right.
I think I've seen paintings of her. I've heard poems about her and stuff
Old
like that.
£5.
And I've seen a few stories about her, but
Mhm.
I can't remember what the £5 note looked like now, to be honest. I thought there was a nun on the front of it.
No, yeah, that was our £5 note. I think it was like in our parents' time.
Oh, when they had shillings and cents, shillings and pence and stuff.
In pounds, yeah. That's way complicated.
The medieval writers who wrote about the Tuatha De Danann were Christians. Sometimes they explained the Tuatha De Danann as fallen angels, neutral angels who sided neither with God nor Lucifer and were punished by being forced to dwell on the earth, or humans who became highly skilled in magic, which is strange because Christians don't believe in magic. That shit's...
Yeah.
Unless it's a miracle. So, yeah, all us Irish were over here doing miracles. However, several writers acknowledged that at least some of them had been gods.
At least some of them.
There is strong evidence that many of the Tuatha De Danann represented the gods of Irish paganism, mainly because Tuatha De Danann means tribe of the gods. And the 9th century scale Tuin Macaril, Tale of the Tuin Macaril, speaks of the Tuatha De Ochus Ande, or tribe of gods and ungods. Gobnu, Credne, and Lukta are called the Tree De Danu, three gods of craft. In Sassnus Cormac's glossary, Anu is called mother of the Irish gods. So Anu is also one of our gods. Not Eru, but Anu. So I assume she might be the mother of Eru. I'm not 100% sure.
Is there a thing, that Eru is like Jesus? So she's. I know that you have the same with the Morrigan, that there's like basically like three goddesses in the one person. But is it the same with Eru, that there's like basically like
I think Eru is one of the goddesses. I think it's like Eru, the Morrigan, and then there's another one.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember who the other one is.
But just, it was interesting to point out as well that we had that before Jesus had that.
Oh, we had everything before they had. They literally did.
The three person. We can describe our paganism with the shamrock as well, Patrick.
Yep. Bastard. Fuck off back to Wales.
Well, leave us our bank holiday. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, Anu is called mother of the Irish gods. Net is a god of war. And Bridget, a goddess of poets, whose father is the Dagda. His own name meaning the great god. So it does get a little confusing because I don't know if Lugh is the head of the thing or Dagda is the head of the thing, or if Lugh and Dagda are the same person. It's difficult because obviously the Christians kept records of of all this stuff because we weren't writing at the time. Mm-hmm. And that means that you kind of have to try and decipher all this stuff from what they wrote. Similar to the Vikings have the same fucking problem, you know? That they have all these gods and stuff in front of them, and they're played off as fairies and stuff like that, and the stories are whitewashed by monks and stuff like that. But I will stress, St. Bridget's Day, the Bridget's Cross, all that shit, they literally took one of our goddesses and to try and convert us easier, turned her into a saint. She is a goddess.
Yeah. But that's why some of her crosses are as well, they're more like triskill than they are.
But there's two types. You have the Christian cross that you would see more commonly on St. Bridget's Day. And then there's a different version of it that looks more like a Celtic knot kind of style than a cross, which was the original version. Yeah. And it was for the goddess Bridget. I don't know why I get so worked up about that. Every St. Bridget's Day when they're going on about St. Bridget, I'm like, no, you asshole. She's a fucking god. Stop calling her a saint. You know?
It's because it lessens her. And not that it lessens her, but like it brings her down.
It means you're beneath
our
Christian God. No. Afraid not. Writing in the 7th century, Triacon explained the side folk as earthly gods, while Fiax him said the Irish adored the side before the coming of St. Patrick. Gubnu Dian Cacht, the physician, and Fildias, that's definitely wrong, but I'm going to try it. It's the best I can do. The mistress of animals are invoked in incantations, further evidence that they were seen as supernatural powers. Dian Cacht turns up in everything. That motherfucker is in every story I fucking read. Every time they need somebody to fucking fix something, it's like, we go to this guy.
That's the guy that got jealous of his son for healing the king, wasn't it? And had the son, he basically healed the son.
We'll be talking about that in a second.
Right.
Several of the Danan are cognate with ancient Celtic deities. Lugh with Lugus, Bridget with Brigitina. Sorry, Brigitina. Brigantia. Sorry, I'm terrible with this. And Nuada with Nodons, and Oma with Omus. That G isn't pronounced. I know it's not pronounced. It's the same as Oma, of the Oma bombing.
And Lou.
Yeah. We don't pronounce G's in Irish.
No, we don't really like them much.
We got no V's. No Y's.
Or Y's.
Fucked up.
We have W's. We don't have W's.
We don't. Do we? We do have V's.
We do have V's, but we don't have W's.
We don't have W's.
We don't have
X's.
X's.
I was shocked the last day when I
Zs.
was looking at one of the boys' school books and I saw the V. I was like, when did we start using V's?
When did we start using V's? Very rarely.
But they're very seldom are they in our language.
Usually our V's are kind of like MHs. They're
BHs.
BHs, yeah. So in mythological accounts, the Tuatha Danann were descended from Nemet, leader of a previous wave of inhabitants of Ireland. In other accounts, they are descended from Danu or Anu, a mother goddess. They came from 4 cities to the north of Ireland, Fallius, Gorius, Murius, and Phineas, where they taught their skills in the sciences, including architecture, the arts, and magic.
I love that that's what this country is all about. I know when you get this hard time of being fucking about alcoholism and depression. And being down.
But that's from the famine. That's only recent. Like.
But the fact that like arts and magic and music and literature and poetry, that's like the heart of what this country is.
But
really
Ireland was
about,
known as the land of saints and scholars, as well as the land of giants. And take the saints out of it, I know that it was a very religious country, but it's scholars. It was. I mean, we were full of culture. We are full of culture. According to the Laura Gabála Érenn, they came to Ireland in dark clouds and landed on the mountains of Conmachna, Rain, and Connacht, in Connacht, otherwise Slieve and Érenn. And they brought a darkness over the sun for 3 days and 3 nights.
Slieve is a mountain, just so you know. So Slieve and Érenn will be the mountain of Érenn. Yeah.
So they immediately burnt the ships so that they should not think of retreating to them. And the smoke and the mist that came from the vessels filled the neighbouring land and air. Therefore, it was conceived they had arrived in clouds of mist.
Now, I know he was only blowing smoke up our arse today. And I don't like anything the man has to say. But for once, Trump said one smart thing. We are a nation of fighters. We are a nation of warriors. And I love the fact that the attitude here was, no. Burn those fucking ships. We're not even going to fucking think about going back. Even if we do want to go back, we're going to make it impossible for us to go back. We are forced to. We're going to fight.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love the fact that the Romans were afraid of their shit to come over here.
Because we fought naked.
They thought we were a race of fucking new giants who love to fight.
Basically, yeah.
They were close. Anyway. A poem in the Lower Gabála Érenn says of their arrival, and I like this. And Lower is also a book, just so you know. I just want to keep getting this in there for people who don't know these words, don't know what we're talking about. Because if you say a poem in the Lower Gabála and the Érenn, it's like, what the fuck is that? It's like, it essentially translates, I don't know what Gabála is exactly, but it's essentially going to be the Book of Irish History or the Book of Irish Conquests or the Book of Irish, arrivals, people turning up and stuff like that, So this is what was said in it. This is the poem. It is God who suffered them, though he restrained them. They landed with horror, with lofty deed in their cloud of mighty combat of spectres upon a mountain of Conmachna na Connacht. Without distinction to discerning Ireland, without ships a rootless course, the truth was not known beneath the skies of stars, whether they were of heaven or of earth.
According to Tuan,
From them are the Tuatha and the Ande, whose origins the learned do not know, but that it seems likely to them that they came from heaven on account of their intelligence and for the excellence of their knowledge. Now, again, that's a Christian opinion of where they came from.
Yeah. Actually, it's really interesting to read the contemporary Romans, their accounts of what they were seeing.
They just came out. Did you see that when they went to, like, one of them, I think it might have even been Caesar or something like that. He went back and he was like, okay, I went there. I saw that shit. It was like, they got the same gods we do. Mm-hmm. They just call Mars this. They just call Jupiter this. They just call what I keep saying.
They did land here because there's been excavations done where certain like Roman pottery and stuff like that was found, but they weren't able to.
I loved that they were as shocked as I was that in a time where nobody could make real hardcore contact with each other, he came back and was like, guys, our gods are over there too. You know?
Exactly. Led by King Nuada, they fought the first battle of Mytera on the west coast, in which they defeated and displaced the native Fir Bolg, who then inhabited Ireland. In the battle, Nuada lost an arm to their champion Srang. Since Nuada was no longer unblemished, and he could not continue as king, which was a stipulation to be king at the time, you had to be completely whole, and was replaced by the half-Fomorian Brez, who turned out to be a tyrant. The physician, Dean Kecht, replaced Nuada's arm with a working silver one, and he was reinstated as king.
I would assume it's Kecht. Joe, with the whole CH shit that we did. Like Irish, the CHs are pronounced like right down at the back of your throat. So
However, Dean Kecht's son, Miach, was dissatisfied with the replacement, so he recited the spell Alt Free Halt D Agus Fe Free Fe, joint to joint of it and sinew to sinew. And which caused the flesh to grow over the silver prosthesis over the course of 9 days and 9 nights. So he spent those 9 days and 9 nights chanting this. However, in a fit of jealous rage, Dean Kecht slew his own son.
So was this because it was like, well, you made it look cooler than I did? Because I'll be honest with you, if I had a sweet ass metal fucking arm like the Winter Soldier and some asshole came in putting skin over it, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Well, it's basically son outdid the father. The father was not happy because he basically outdone by the son. It's awful.
Who are you going to be more afraid of? The king with the regular arms or the king with the solid fucking steel arm that's going to knock your face off as soon as he hits you?
It gets worse though. Do you? I don't know if we mention it here. When he was buried, when the son was buried, what sprung up from his grave was every herb, every medicinal cure that you could find under the sun came from his grave. And Dean Kecht said, well, that definitely isn't on. And he came along and he basically destroyed the grave, which is why we don't have a lot of cures for a lot of diseases. You know what I
did notice about Irish mythology, and it's similar as well, because again, these are the two I know, so this is why I'm going to keep saying it's similar to the Norse mythology, is our heroes, our gods, our spiritual people aren't perfect.
No,
they go
not.
Back and forth. I mean, Phil McCool has got a plethora of fucking stories where he's a hero.
There's one where he's awful.
But there's one where he's an absolute cunt.
Is it Untriel? Not Untriel.
A full-blown cunt.
Yeah.
He's a dickhead. What he
doesn't even give water to a dying man.
He's the most vile, evil man in that story. And then you go back and he's a hero again in all these other stories.
It's the pursuit of Diarmid and Grania. That's the one where he's awful.
We're going to mention that at some point. And it's the same with Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn, great man. But my God, he cheated on every woman he was ever with. You know what about him cheating on his wife, where his wife followed him and fucking saw him cheating with a bunch of women in it.
And then, I know, but there's some shitty stories about Cuchulainn where he does come off as the bastard in it, and then you realise that, well, do you know, like where he kills his son, but there was a geese, like he was an unbreakable vow. He couldn't let on that this guy was his son. So I mean that you have to like take the story from all angles.
These people, like especially like Cuchulainn, would have taken like my word as my bond, and I am not breaking it for anybody, family, fucking included.
And this son was also sent to kill him, like, so I mean, do you know,
he kills his best friend as well.
He kills his best friend.
That's a really sad story.
That
really is. Because neither of them want to do it. Neither of them are involved. They both just been employed by different sides of the army, and they have to because of their honor and because of their thing. And they fight for fucking days, like days and days and days. That battle goes on. It's just so epic to read. they're like back and forth and they're smashing each other up every day. And this guy
It's
is like
sad,
the one person who's closest to, equaling him in power.
Ferdia.
And finally, the battle, is this where he dies? Is this where Cuchulainn dies? Where he ends up fucking hanging him, or kind of holding himself up on the rock, and he still manages to kill all these people coming at him. And then once he finally kills the last guy, he kind of passes.
He tied himself to the rock, didn't he?
Yeah. And then you see the crow, which is the Morgan, landing behind him and stuff like that. I have a picture of it upstairs, and I want to get a tattoo on it.
Yeah. There's an amazing statue of that, though. I can't
I want to buy that too. I showed it to you ages ago. I was I want to get this. I think it was
done from Baugh.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. I'm still going to get it when I find it again.
So, because of Nuada's restoration as leader, Brez complained to his family and his father Elaha, who had sent him to seek assistance from Balor, king of the Fomorians. The Tuatha De Danann then fought the second battle of Mytira against the Fomorians. Nuada was killed by the Fomorian king Balor's poisonous eye, but Balor was killed by Lu, champion of the Tuatha De Danann, who then took over as king.
No, this is Balor, who was leader of the Fomorians, as opposed to the Judgment Day. That's a completely different guy. His real name is Fergal. It's not Finn at all. He's lying to you. But he's a really nice guy. He's a really cool guy. I met him once. I got to train with him once. He's awesome. But that's where he gets his name. That's where Finn Balor gets his name. The wrestler Finn Balor gets his name from this guy, Balor of the Evil Eye. And if you want to know a little bit more about who the Fomorians are, we cover them on Mini Monsters this week. Amy does a great job talking about giving us a little bio on them. And it's a really interesting story as well, because there was a battle and eventually they do integrate in, and it's just, but again, it's the equivalent of the Norse gods versus the giants, the ice giants that they had over there. If you've seen Marvel's Thor, you'll see them as enemies to fucking Thor and Odin and all that. It was where Loki comes from in the Marvel universe, but that's not the way it works in the real world. Yep.
Okay, cool.
It's what I'm sticking with. It's my religion, so fuck it. But he's just another god in that sense, but he's not half giant in that sense. But there is a bit of intermingling going on between races at this point. So
then a third battle was fought against a subsequent wave of invaders, the Milesians, from northwest of the Iberian Peninsula, which is present-day Gallica and northern Portugal. Descendants of the Mil Hispania, who are thought to represent the Goidelic Celts.
So that would be the kind of the Spanish side of us, isn't it?
Yeah. It's basically down around there. You get kind of like the Basque kind of influence. It can be heard in our music,
there's this kind of notion that Irish people are pale white, red-headed, freckled. That's one version of Irish. There's also the Black Irish, which will be more along the lines of what I am. I know you're looking at me now and you're saying, but you got a ginger beard. When I had hair, or when I had let my hair grow out, it's brown. It's a dark brown. And I tan very easily. You do. My whole family tans extremely easily. I mean, like, we burn for like half a day, and then suddenly we are like fucking a sausage coming out of the fucking pan.
In fairness, one side of your family look like there could be Italian in you, like, so I mean.
But I always joked about that as well. My dad used to make jokes about that as well. Like, he'd be going up to see my granddad, he'd be like, go see the Don.
Pictures of your dad younger remind me of Christopher Moltisanti.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. He'd get a kick out of that.
It's just the colour and stuff. That's always what I thought.
But yeah, we're not all pasty white fucking freckly gingers. No. Then we also have the Black Irish, I believe is what the Americans call us.
A third battle was fought against we said that.
And people who are watching the video cast right now, it's March, man. On top of being the Black Irish, we also have hay fever season here hitting us over here, and I'm terrible with that. Irish people, we suffer from hay fever, which is fucked up considering we are like the most country type people you're gonna find. There's like nothing but fucking foliage
Imagine
around
being
us
a
all the
farmer
time,
and having to put up with it.
But my whole family has shitty hay fever. So I'm sniffing and I'm fine. There's nothing I can do about it. So you're going to see me here. I'll try my hardest when I'm editing it to edit over to Amy Rose every time I got to wipe my nose. So then you can see something nice rather than see me doing this.
So the Milesians encountered 3 Tuatha De Danann goddesses. It was Eru, Banba, and Fola.
So these are probably the 3 we were talking about.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. And who asked that the island be named after them. Eru is the origin of the modern name Éire, and Banba and Fulla are still sometimes used as the poetic names for Ireland.
See, I might be wrong. But I think when I explained, I think I got it wrong. And I think the actual thing is that the Morrigan is all three of these combined. I think that's another thought that's in my head. It's one of the two. The Morrigan's rather one of these three people, or when the three of them combine, they're the Morrigan.
No, the Morrigan is Matcha, Banab. It sounds like Banba and so it's there's three. It's definitely the Matcha is there.
Again, I just realized we keep spouting off this word, the Morrigan, and you might have not any idea who this person is. The Morrigan is essentially kind of like, I know we already said we have an angel.
You're right. Sorry, they're the Morrigan.
The three of them together.
Yeah.
So I know we've already said that we have the far down that's going to be, but he's essentially someone who guides you from. Do you know how you have, like, in some religions, you see these, the lake of fire you got to go, or is it a lake of fire or a lake, the river Styx that you got to go over.
You cross over.
And there's a guy there to guide you over. The far down is essentially that guy. He's the Grim Reaper. He's going to come here and tell you, all right, come with me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Morrigan is more like a symbol of death that's coming. If you're going out to battle in the morning, and you see a woman on the side of the road cleaning clothes, washing her clothes, that means you ain't coming home from that battle. That's you. You're done. Finished. That's a sign of you are going to die. Otherwise, she could be a war goddess who'll actually come to the war and help you in battle. Kind of be. You want her on your side in a battle. If you're at war, you want the Morrigan to be on your side. She mightn't do anything, but it's like Odin being a god of war. He's there and he'll influence it enough for the right result to come out, and she does the same. But if you get up in the morning and you know you're going to war and you're leaving the house to go to war and you see some hot girl on the side of the road washing her clothes, you turn the fuck back around and get back into bed because you ain't coming home.
She had
otherwise.
two sisters as well. That's definitely where Matcha and Badb. I cannot pronounce that name for the
Say it again.
five. Badb.
Badb. Bod.
Bod. Okay.
I don't think you pronounce that last B. I think it's just bod.
Okay, so they were kind of nearly a triple goddess of war as well, like.
Yeah,
but
again, a holy trinity.
Yeah, Matcha was one of these badass women that you didn't fuck with either. There's a really good story about her with the husband comparing her to the racehorse.
I will point out, we keep saying they're really good stories, but we are now nearly an hour in and we still haven't hit our main subject. So we're going to have to
suggest stories, but we have to go find them.
We plan to be around for a lot more St. Patrick's Day, so we'll give you another one next year. So let's just try and get you what we got here, because we're on page 8 of 24.
Nice. So the three husbands, Macul, Macket, and Macgrana, were three kings of the Tuatha De Danann at that time and asked for a truce of 3 days, during which the Milesians would lie at anchor 9 waves distance from the shore. How long is a piece of string?
God, we have to be so artsy about everything we say.
9 waves off the shore.
Just stay over there. It's like, I want you to lie at anchor 9 waves distance from the shore. So they have to have one guy standing there all night going, 1 wave, 2 wave, 3 wave.
Shit, you're gone 1 wave
back
too
up,
far.
back up.
The Milesians complied, but the Tuatha De Danann created a magical storm in an attempt to drive them away. The Milesian poet Amergan calmed the sea with his verse. Then his people landed and defeated the Tuatha De Danann at Thal 2, and that guy seems like Moses.
I love, again, the fact that it's like our magic is just us singing at each other.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to do a magic trick on you. La, 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 la.
It sounds like the Norse and the Vikings doing their rap battles nearly, you know.
When you're playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla and you got to stop and do that stupid side mission where the guy's forcing you to fucking...
What do they call it? Oh, there's the word on it, but this is what it sounds like.
It's not barding, is it? Or bard? I know bard is someone that was... I
can't think of what it is.
I can't remember. Okay, just keep
going.
When
Amergan Call was called upon to divide the land between the Tuatha De Danann and his own people, he cleverly allotted the portion above the ground to the Milesians and the portion underground to the Tuatha De Danann. The Tuatha De Danann were led underground into the Sheila Mounds by Manannán mac Lir and Tirnanog onto a flowery plain or plain of honey attested to in the voyage of Bran.
So as you can see, we have a plethora of gods and magical creatures, and they're all here on the Emerald Isle. Fucking everywhere. Can't fucking walk without falling over a leprechaun. Swear to fucking God, man. They tell you they're not real. Fucking everywhere.
If they were real, we would be rich.
I don't know. I've been chasing a little prick for the last fucking couple of years, and he just keeps getting away.
And Josh is proof that we are a nation of drunks. And today we're going to be talking about one of our favourite Irish legends even, and that's the tale of Abhartach the Dwarf Vampire, a demon believed in some mythology to be derived from the enemies of the Tuatha De Danann, the Fomorians, but he was a dwarf, and the Fomorians were giants.
I don't know.
It's so.
I'm sure some Christian fucked it up somewhere. Do you know what it was? He was probably some big, buff, strong-looking Celtic dude, and some fucking Christian monk came along and was like,
"You need to cut him down to size."
Well, no, actually, there's an explanation for that.
Okay.
There is an explanation for this. Sorry. We're going to get into that in a minute. So, as I said, we do cover the Fomorians and mini monsters. Go check that out because we don't have time to get into who the fucking Fomorians are. We're going to talk a little bit about it here, but not over the top. So, go for it.
Good. Originally, the Fomorians seem to have been regarded as malevolent spirits dwelling underwater and in the nether regions of the earth. In one of the earliest references to them, a probably 7th century elegy from Estelman, they are said to dwell under the worlds of men. Later, they were portrayed as sea raiders. This was influenced by the Viking raids in Ireland that were taking place around that time, and they were often portrayed as monstrous. Sometimes they are said to have the body of a man and the head of a goat, or to have had one eye, one arm, and one leg.
That must have been difficult to get a lot around.
Yeah, that gives me very funny pictures in my head. It's kind of like one leg in the middle of their body, as opposed to having one leg.
Much,
However, those Fomorians who have relationships with the Tuatha De, such as Elaha and his son Brez, were portrayed as darkly beautiful, and I've heard that before. That that's
what I'm saying. You got to trust the fucking stuff that was written about them. So they could have been demonized or made to look uglier. To cut them down to size, as you fucking pointed out.
And also, if the Christians were talking about them, it was nearly a sin to be beautiful back then. So they're from, and it was like, especially if you were a woman, it was seen as a curse. The Fomorians are the enemies of the Ireland's first settlers and of the supernatural Tuatha De, even I'm stuttering, with whom they are contrasted. However, in some sources, there is an overlap between the Fomorians and Tuatha De. A figure called Tehra is named as presiding over both races.
The conflict between the Tuatha De and the Fomorians has been likened to other Indo-European myths of war between gods, similar to the Aesir and the Vanir in Norse mythology, the Olympians and the Titans in the Greek mythology, and between the Devas and the Asuras in Vedic mythology. What the fuck is Vedic?
Indian, I think.
Okay. Dahi O'Ogan writes that the Tuatha De gaining agricultural knowledge from the Fomorians is similar to the Norse and the Vedic versions, where the defeated races represent the fertility of the soil. Now, the next part we were going to talk about was going to be my religious beliefs, but I think we've already covered that. We're kind of eating up time here. Basically, I'm a full-blown pagan. All this shit is my version of the Bible. This is what I believe in. But the main difference is, whereas the Christians will tell you everything in the Bible, word for word, is what you need to do. This is following rules. The pagan gods, generally, when they tell you a story, it's a
fable. It's you take a meaning from it.
Look, this is what I did. I fucked up doing it this way. You can copy me and fuck up as well, but you learn a lesson. Or you could do it this way. Or I encountered this person and they tried to trick me, and this is how they fucked up, and this is why I got the better of them, and that's because I used my head, and this is why you should do it this way. They're exactly like that. They're not rules to follow. They're stories to advise you, to guide you, to help you try and find a better path and a better you. Not forcing it on you, not telling you, if you do it wrong, it isn't a sin. We don't have sin in paganism.
No.
We just have you made a boo-boo, no, let's try and fix it.
I picture the way they talk a lot like how Floki would have talked in Vikings. That's how I picture a lot of our gods, to be honest.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Abhartach may be the same individual as one Fomorian encountered by the great Fionn McCool by the name of Abhartach. And as the story goes, Abhartach offered himself as a servant to Fionn McCool shortly after McCool succeeded his father as leader of the Fianna and a band of mighty Milesian warriors. In a gesture of goodwill, Abhartach gave them a wild grey horse, which 14 Fianna had to mount onto its back before it would even move.
So 14 warriors on this one horse to get a fucking move. This is a big ass horse.
After Abhartach had mounted behind the Fianna on the horse, it galloped off, taking the warriors to the other world where the Tuatha Dé Danann had been driven underground by the Milesians. The Fianna, led by Fionn McCool's assistant, Falter, had to acquire a magical ship to hunt down Abhartach's steed. Falter, being the Fianna's best tracker, managed to navigate into the other world where Abhartach was made to release the imprisoned Fianna warriors, and to satisfy honour, had to hold on to the horse's tail and be dragged back to Ireland.
Oh, I love that shit. And again, it reminds me so much of the Norse stuff where Loki tries to fuck with somebody, and then because of his own honour, it's like, all right, you can do this to me. I deserve it. Go ahead.
And Abhartach was actually later rejected from being allowed to join the Fianna over this incident.
Now, we could sit here all day and tell you tales as well about Fianna and the Fianna. Like we say, there's plenty of them. In fact, there's a whole cycle of them. Our history is broken up into cycles. There's the Fenian cycle, the Ulster cycle. There's a few others. I can't think of them all right now, but you can explore them all. If you go online, you could go down a rabbit hole on Wikipedia that would take you for fucking weeks to get through all of it. But it's really interesting stuff, and they all interlock in one way or another at some point. I will give you a quick background of one of my favourite Fionn McCool tales. And it's one that it's a cool story. So Fiona is connected to many of the legends of the Fenian cycle. He first came to prominence for catching and eating the salmon of knowledge. This is the story that most people would know Fiona McCool from. There's a salmon. Now I'm going to give you this one quick because I have a better story that I want to tell. So basically, there was a mythical salmon that swam in a river in Ireland. And the story was that if you could catch this salmon and eat it, you would gain all knowledge. Very similar again to Odin's search for taking out, giving up his eye, one eye to gain knowledge of the runes, and hanging himself from a tree for 9 days, and piercing himself in the side. Again, I could swear I heard that story somewhere else before. A guy that sacrificed himself for the better of everybody else by hanging himself off of something, getting a stuck right there in the side, right here, just under the belly. It happened somewhere else as well, didn't it?
He didn't really hang himself, though.
Well, he got help. Yeah. Too much of a fucking pussy to do it himself. Anyway, another important legend. Anyway, in the salmon of knowledge, Fiona is learning from this man who has been hell-bent on trying to get this salmon. And he finally catches the salmon, and he has it cooking, and he basically said, look, I got to go do something here. I got to go get more... basically I'm garnished for this fucking dinner. And I'm going to go off and I'm going to do some bits and pieces. So just make sure this cooks properly, but do not eat it. At one point, Fionn touches the salmon to see if it's cooked enough, hot enough. And it burns his finger. And when it burns his finger, he does what comes naturally to us. And he stuck it in his mouth to suck on it to try and ease the burning pain. Problem was, that was him... essentially just the juices of the salmon meant that he had fed from the salmon. So now the salmon would only give knowledge to him. So when the man who was teaching Fionn came back,
Finnegas.
He had to,
Finnegas was his name.
He essentially had to say, well, fuck. This sucks that this happened, but it's not your fault. It's a fuck up. You eat the salmon now because it's not going to work for me anymore, and you have the knowledge.
I'm not even
Fionn
hungry
had this magical knowledge of everything because of it.
Yeah.
But my favourite story, my personal favourite story, is the one about the Giant's Causeway.
I do like that story.
So, where are we? Fionn met his first wife, Sive, while hunting. She had been transformed into a deer by a druid, and after Fionn caught her, she turned into a beautiful woman. This happens a lot in Ireland. You just catch shit and it just turns into hot chicks. It's just amazing.
We're everywhere.
She was just a fucking...
fish.
Yep. Fishing one day, pulled her out, and bang! Hot chick. She bore Fionn a child called Oisin, who we spoke of earlier, before being transformed again into a deer and separating Fionn from his son for many years. Another tale tells of how Fionn, in a jealous rage, pursued the lovers Grania and Diarmid across Ireland after they had eloped together. But the most famous legend of Fionn McCool surrounds the Giant's Causeway in County Antrim. This is a big landmark even today for Ireland. If you come and you do all the landmarks for Ireland, you are going to end up in the Giant's Causeway.
I think it might even be a heritage site at this stage.
Oh, yeah. The story goes that Fionn built the causeway to get to Scotland and battle with a rival giant called Benadonner. Benadonner. Okay, thank you. When he got there, he found that the Scottish giant was asleep, but was also far bigger than himself. So Fionn returned back across the causeway saying, fuck this, I ain't doing it. I'm not dealing with this.
Not a hope.
When Benadonner woke up, he came across the causeway intent on fighting Fionn. Fionn's wife dressed up Fionn as a little baby, as a baby. And when Benadonner arrived, she said Fionn wasn't home and that he had to be quiet not to wake the baby. When Benadonner saw the baby, he decided that if that's the fucking baby, I don't want to see the dad. And he booted it back to Scotland, ripping up the causeway as he went. So he turned tail, he fled, he ripped up the causeway, and all that remains are the ends of the causeway. That's why it's called the Giant's Causeway. And on either side, at Scotland and at Ireland, there are remnants of this fucking causeway. They're so clean and clear. They're beautiful to look at. But yeah, they are still there. They're in Stafford in Scotland and in Antrim in Ireland. So, I mean, what more proof do you need? I mean, the remains of our story still exists here, leaving more proof that Irish paganism, leaving more proof of Irish paganism than Christianity.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You know, I mean, from what I can tell, the Christians are as bad as the English at stealing culture at this stage.
At least they're not holding things hostage in museums.
Huh? Well, the Christians aren't holding shit hostage.
No. I mean actual stuff that should be like with their cultures, their own cultures. Huh?
How about money?
Oh, the money, yeah. But I mean like thousands and thousands of years worth of artifacts, not just from Ireland, but from other countries that are all sitting there in London, like, do you know, that should be with their own cultures in their own countries.
Okay, so no, at this point, you're probably looking at us and saying, you're a true crime horror podcast.
Where are you going with this?
What are you doing? Well, we've been talking about history. This isn't Playing with Bones. It's a live podcast. Why are you talking about history stuff? We're getting to it. We're now up to date. We're here. We're getting into that part of things. We're about to kick off with that. So let's get into it. Let's start talking about what the main topic is today and the story that happened not so long ago.
So it was in the little village of Sladavarty in the distant past that a fearsome dwarf tyrant known as Abhartach ruled the land. Stature and size were much prized in ancient Ireland, as well they might be, for a tall warrior. A strong farmer will have an easier time of it than a short one, or more likely to win glory for his people. So as a dwarf was straight away, he had a disadvantage. Yeah. Growing up, Abhartach was often slighted for his size and given the short end of the stick whenever it came to do work that was deemed unfit for others. But he managed to put himself at the service of a druid who knew much of ancient lore. Twisting and strange incantations, sorcery old when the hills were mountains, and purple dragons ruled from their cities of bronze high above. Scut work and pot cleaning he did with great vigour, cooking and washing and ingratiating himself to the druid, who indulged his interests as one might teach a pet a few tricks.
Now, there is another version of the story that he was a very good-looking, big, strong Fomorian king.
Okay.
That was a bit of a tyrant, and that he fell out of a window and died. And all the people rejoiced at his death and buried him and drank around his grave. And then he decided to come back to cause trouble. But he came back as the dwarf kind of evil thing.
See, I thought you were going to say when he fell out the window, the way he hit his ground. He hit the ground to be...
What, like a cartoon? He started walking around like an accordion for the rest of his life. Every time he walked.
Did you see Wile E. Coyote going around protesting?
Trying to get the movie out.
Oh, he was class. But anyway, back to Abhartach. He had a trick up his sleeve that the druid did not see coming. And so one rain-swept day, the druid went missing and the dwarf along with him, as well as his many scrolls and texts. After some time, a new terror began to walk the earth. The dwarf had returned and was strangely changed in appearance, with eyes of green that could be seen from afar and a stench that could be smelled from even further. On that year, Abhartach began his revenge on those he felt had given him short shrift, whether justly or otherwise, and he demanded and took whatever he wanted from the people of the area. Those who defied him were struck with a blight and illness, crushed by great stones, or found in the morning with ghastly looks upon their faces, stone cold dead. Well, the people cried out under the lash of this diminutive demon, whose powers made him safe in his stack, from where smokes and broils often emanated, until a chieftain by the name of Cathran heard their pleas and rode out with his hosts to tackle the tyrant.
Now, again, I will just point out in another version of the story, which is actually more relevant to what we're doing today, Abhartach would come back for revenge and demand blood sacrifice from the people who had slighted him. Mm-hmm. And he would literally come back with a bucket looking for them to fill it with blood. So that's when they got on to Cathran to help him out.
Okay. After a quick battle, the dwarf was slain and local folk held feis and ceilidh to celebrate their new liberation, pouring out mead upon the mound where Abhartach was buried in a standing position, as was their custom.
And a feis and a ceilidh, or a ceilidh is basically a dance. And a feis was basically a party and a dance is what they had.
We have them in Ireland still, like the feis ceol. It's basically like a celebration
and
of
when you
music.
go to secondary school, then it's like, do you know how Americans have dances? We have like the odd kind of dance like that. They'd call it a disco. Still to this day.
Yep.
He'd have a disco, and but then other times they'd have a ceilidh, and we'd have to all learn how to do Irish dances and fucking come in after school for what's supposed to be fun and do these stupid dances. But
I do find them fun. I just hate the vamping of the piano on it. It drives me mad. Stated they slept little, knowing the wrath they had unwittingly
unleashed upon themselves. So they slept not knowing that by killing Abhartach and burying him in the way they had basically brought a whole load of shit down on themselves.
Exactly. For Abhartach's masters in the other world were not content to let him lie, nor was he done with his vengeance taking, as the very next night the tribes heard a fearsome battering at their doors, which opened to reveal none other than the dwarf himself, made more horrible yet by his sojourn through the Vale. A new terror began. The Red Knights, when the dwarf would rend his way back from where he lay with iron claws, and take not cattle or young women, but instead demand blood.
Here it is.
Blood he got.
I knew it was there somewhere.
Again, the people called out, and again Cathran returned and slew him, burying him in the same spot to no avail. Frustrated at his failures, the chieftain paid a visit on a druid with whom he was acquainted, and asked how he might dispose of the troublesome revenant. The druid shook his head slowly and said that the creature Abhartach was one of the Nev Marv, or walking dead.
Nav
Marv, sorry. So never dead. Nav.
Walking dead.
Yeah. Or walking. No, I just wondered what the literal translation was. Like Navreva is.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Or walking dead, making his abode between the worlds and could not be slain, only that he could be subdued. He told Cathran the means by which this could be achieved. So Cathran returned, and taking a sword made of yew, he pierced the dwarf through, burying him again in the same place, but this time upside down, covering the tomb with a large stone and surrounding it with thorns. Just to point out, the yew trees were sacred back in pagan times, but they were also incorporated then. You'd find a lot of yew trees in graveyards, in Christian graveyards, because they was incorporated into Christian beliefs here as well.
Okay. And again, you can see here, this is again common with vampires.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. The common way to kill them is wood through the chest.
Exactly. And so Abhartach caught beneath the earth, where he lies to this day. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no. Indeed, to the locals in the area, Abhartach's grave is known as the Slaughtervarty Dolmen. In shape, it's a large rock with two smaller rocks under a hawthorn tree. Back in 1997, attempts were made to clear the land, but workmen who tried to cut down the thorn tree arching across Abhartach's grave allegedly had their chainsaw malfunction 3 times. While attempting to lift the great stone, a steel chain snapped, cutting the hand of one of the labourers and ominously allowing blood to soak into the ground.
And to people who might think we are not telling the truth, this grave is there. Search it. Look it up. This story is there. It is real. 100%. Go look it up.
I would assume it's one of the portal dolmens, is it, with the 2 and the...
No, it's not. I'll show it you afterwards.
Okay.
I had pictures of it.
Cool. This would be the last attempt to move the ominous grave until 2020, when a motorway bypass was planned for the village of 6 Mile Hill in County Derry in the north of Ireland.
Not County Londonderry in Northern Ireland, but County Derry in the north of Ireland.
6 Mile Hill is famous for one thing, and that is vampires. Locals are only too happy to tell any tourist willing to listen how the village was once visited even by Bram Stoker.
I don't know, maybe he liked it and came back again.
Maybe he did. Who then went on to base his classic story of Count Dracula on the village's tale of Abhartach, the dwarf vampire. An example of these local storytellers are Eugene Moffat and William Baugh, childhood friends now in their mid-20s who loved to scare tourists with the story, and even acted as a guide to the grave of Abhartach. For a small fee, of course.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, from what I can tell about these two guys, they're very typical Irish. They're a typical Irish young fella. How do I describe this? There's almost like a weird kind of stereotype of it. And
Laddish?
I have a lot of little points here, and I think it's all going to kind of fucking go into one kind of thing here. Employment in Ireland is very up and down over the generations. And truthfully, we've only had really one boom period where employment was plentiful. And there is this thing, this kind of myth about Ireland, that there is a generational depression that's been going on because of what's happened in our history, between the famine, between the British taking over and destroying the place and destroying our culture, and other things like that, and the constant battles and the constant war and the constant debt that there is, and the constant lack of money and jobs, that there's this generational fucking depression that goes on between us. And on top of that, there's this, I suppose, especially with the older generation, there's a very different view of what makes a man and what makes a man, basically. And for the older generation, their mentality is that you leave school, you go to work, and then you work yourself until you fucking drop. I mean, you just work and work and work and work, and if you're not working, you should be sitting in the pub drinking. And that's your two options. Work yourself until you're fucking about to fall over, or drink yourself until you're about to fall over. One or the fucking other. And then our generation kind of came along, and they look at us as a bunch of layabouts that don't want to fucking do anything because we decided to go a different road about things. We're not interested in being fucking hammered 24 hours a day. We're not interested in being slave labor for fucking shit wages constantly. We're trying to find better ways to make money for ourselves in a modern, or to find our way in a modern society, in a modern world. And I think Eugene, especially of these pair, had that problem. So when you get to your early 20s and you've decided you're not going to college, a lot of the times you could go through, and I did this myself, you go through a period of time in your early 20s where you're kind of directionless. You don't really know what to do with yourself. And a lot of that time will be taken up then with being in the pub, drinking with your friends, having fun, and trying to figure out what comes next. And Eugene especially was one of these people who was directionless, because William knew that he eventually wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, his father was a mortician. He wanted to keep the family business going. Yeah. Whereas Eugene, his father was a contractor, a builder. And he really didn't want to go down that line of route. He wanted something better for himself, but he couldn't figure out what that was, because at the same time there is a little bit of a problem with work ethic, in the sense of sometimes Irish young fellas can be like, I can't figure out what I want to do, so I'm just going to sit back and wait for something to come to me.
And it's not going to come to you. You need to get up off your ass.
I wasn't that. I was kind of always the kind of person who was like, all right, I've been sitting around.
You were a bit of an entrepreneur back then.
Huh?
You were a bit of an entrepreneur. Like,
well, yeah, I had my tattoo studio at the time and stuff like that. But I'd always try something. I always figure something out to keep me busy and keep me going, to try and get me to the next place that I need to go to. But again, like the prospects sometimes for work in this country is very difficult. It's a small country, divided into smaller fucking counties, divided into smaller parishes. And it's very hard, unless you're willing to uproot yourself and move to one of the cities or move to one of the bigger towns, you're very limited with what you can achieve in your own area.
Yeah.
I mean, again, now we're in a world where the internet makes a big difference. I mean, you work for a company that's remote.
I can work
they're
from
based
home,
in Dublin, and you're at the other end of the country working from. We do this, and we're looking at a worldwide audience, you know, and stuff like that. So, I mean, there are different ways to do things, but the older culture or the older generations can't really figure out that we're doing that this way, and that they can't figure out why we're not out there fucking swinging hammers and, you know, working. And that is literally what they do here. They work until they drop. It's no bullshit. It's not like a fucking joke. These guys will work and then drop dead of a heart attack in their fucking 50s and 60s.
It's no way to I mean, like, we're being convinced that 50s and 60s here is like your Middle Ages, and then you've got like maybe 10 years of it, you know, like you don't even have 10 years anymore. Like, but we're, you know, technically, I know we're not middle aged, but technically we're in the middle of our life. And they tell you, no, sure, you've got another like 30 years until you're actually retirement age. It's like, what the fuck? I mean, it's not that I don't want to work, but I'm not going to be run into the ground.
My dad, and like, it was the smartest thing he could have done. When I was like 16 and I wanted a part-time job, summer job, my dad got on to one of his second cousins who was a painter and got me a job working with him. Now that taught me a trade, and I learned how to be a painter. And to this day, anytime we're out of work or we need extra money, I can take a painting job and I can go do that and I can make a bit of money. And it's great that I have that. It's not. I knew very early on it wasn't what I wanted to do as a career, but I knew it was great to have that trade to be able to fall back on whenever I needed it. But I remember the first year I was doing it, the guys I was working for had a big crew. This was kind of near the end of our boom, all right? The Celtic Tiger. And we were on a lot of building sites that year. And I remember one particular building site. There was a block layer on it. And this dude was like hunched over and looked like he was dying while he was laying these bricks. And I'm looking at him, and this guy is in his late 50s, early 60s. He looked like he could have been about 80.
Okay.
And he is slaving away and breaking his back doing this. I remember looking at him and thinking,
not me.
Nope.
Not do that.
I'm not doing this. No way. Fuck that, man. I got one life. That's not my life. I'm out of here. Oh, I didn't. I stayed there, and I actually worked for those men for another fucking 4, 5, 6 years on and off, like, you know, where I could come and go as I pleased, because they didn't really give a shit, because it was like, oh, well, we're busy. If you want work, it's here. No, we're quiet. I can give you work, but if you don't want to go do something else. So I used to come and go a lot, and I still do to a degree. I haven't been able to do it for a while because I've had a bit of a shoulder injury, but I know that when my shoulder's okay, that's an option for me.
You can go back to.
If I need to do something part-time, I can go do that, and I'll be fine, like, you know?
Yeah.
So Eugene and William, they were kind of living in this small village, which means their prospects, again, were very, very small. In a village, your prospects are you work in the local shop, you work in the local pub, you work on the local farm, or you're a builder. Yep. They're your jobs if you're a man.
Or if there's no taxi there, you could probably make an all right living as a taxi. Well, yeah, out around the surrounding areas, bring them into town, bring them back.
Maybe.
But I mean, you'd be the only taxi in the village, like.
But yeah, so that's kind of the way it works over here when it comes to that, and that's why we drink so much and why we're depressed a lot. Exactly. Anyway.
So Eugene and William would often make their way to Abhartach's grave using the remote location as a place to drink cans of beer when short on cash, which was often, or when the pub closed and they were in the mood to keep going for the night.
Innocent enough. I mean, we've all done this. More so in our teens than in our 20s. But then again, I lived in town until my 30s, so I don't know what year culture after parties were like. But here, once we got to like our 20s, there was always someone with a house. But when we were in our teens, I won't say what it was called because it'll only get me in trouble.
I was wondering, were you about to let it slip?
We used to go drinking in fields. That's what we used to do. You get your 6 cans and a naggin of whiskey or a naggin of vodka and all your mates, and you'd go over the fields and you'd light a little campfire and everyone would sit there drinking and getting absolutely hammered, and then they'd all fall home. Dirt all over your pants, and your mother going, "Where have you been until this hour? What happened to your pants?"
So, like you said, for the most part, just kids being kids.
Yeah.
Innocent enough, except for the night of April 19th, 2020, or more accurately, the early hours of April 20th, 2020.
Yes.
Just like they'd done 100 times before, Eugene and William left the Stoker Bar after closing, still thirsty and looking to keep the night going. So they grabbed a takeaway from behind the bar and started their trek towards the mythical gravesite. According to Eugene, on this night, he and William were deep in conversation about their futures, so engrossed in the debate of what was and wasn't realistic that they failed to notice their surroundings.
I get that. You know me. I'm a real social drinker, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm drinking alone, I could have one, maybe 2 drinks before I'm like, I'm fucking bored of this. And I'll just stop. And that's me. I just can't do it. I know a lot of Irishmen love their pint on their own.
Yeah.
They would, like, my dad would search out an empty bar just so he could be left the fuck alone to have his drink. My brother, when he used to drink, would search out a quiet bar. My brother is 2 years younger than me, and he would intentionally look for old men bars that were filled with 60 and 70 year olds because he could have more of a laugh with them and knew that they'd shut the fuck up if he wanted to be left alone. So they'd seek him up. But whereas me, I'm different. I have to talk to somebody while I'm having a drink. If I'm doing it on my own, I just get bored, I get stopped, and I have no interest. But if I get into a real conversation, then I just zooms past, and suddenly at 6 a.m, I'm all out of whiskey, and I'm still deep into the chat, like, you know?
I get you.
I mean, it's how many times has it happened to us? That's like, shit, the Jim Beam's gone. And then we look up and the clock's like, shit,
It's
6
9
o'clock. The kids
Oh,
are going to be up
it's
in like an hour.
6
Oh, balls. Today's
yeah.
going to suck. But
It's fine.
And even then you're kind of like, but I'm so fucking hot in this conversation. But usually when I realize the bottle's empty and I realize the time, my body suddenly just start going, no, I know this conversation is fun.
We did it
but it's
once
time
where
to-
we were just like, oh, it's 7 o'clock. I might as well just stay up. And that was a tough day.
Well, we were smart. We were like, hey, kids, we're going to have a movie day. And everyone went into the sitting room through our movies and we fell asleep on the couch.
I think they did too, so it wasn't that bad. But that's all well and good when it's happening in a bar and you're at home. But even in Ireland, where we don't have a lot of dangerous animals, like, it's still good to keep your wits about you when you roam the countryside in the dark.
Yes.
Something Eugene and William would have been very familiar with, considering they grew up in the area. They were also very aware that the area was home to a wild boar, one of the few deadly animals we do have roaming the wild here.
I like boars. I saw a bunch of wild ones that were found close to our village. No, when I say close to our village, it was like
Off that way.
maybe about fucking 10 miles one way or whatever. But what really pissed me off was they euthanized all of them.
Yeah.
They thought it was too dangerous that they came this far into the public
Civilization.
essentially, that they decided that the only way to deal with it was to put them down to try. Why not tranquilize them and move them deeper into the fucking woods?
Because
Why not tranquilize them and move them to a fucking sanctuary?
Yeah.
Why the hell do they have to be put down?
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
These are gorgeous animals. I don't give a shit what anyone says. Boars, they're not like regular pigs. They are fucking cool, gorgeous looking
Did they
animals.
hurt anybody, like, even, or did they just come in too far?
But as we're about to fucking see here, they're
Nearly
not
never made it, though.
They're going to be, if they're afraid of you, their natural reaction is going to be gore.
Well, yeah, that is true. So on this night, as William and Eugene joked and jostled at each other by the grave, they were unaware of the female boar nearby and ready to strike as the two were getting close to her home and her newborn little squeakers.
I love that. Like, and that's like, apparently boars that are under 10 months old are called squeakers.
No, I thought yours.
I don't know if that's what we call them here, because I just looked up the general terms for it, so it could have been an American boar, couldn't have been a boar, but I love it that they call it squeakers. So, as I just said, they were talking and gore. If you're wondering where that's coming from, that's Rhino in wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
He did the gore. That was basically the spear.
Yeah.
We call it the gore because he was a rhino. And while the two were talking, this boar came racing at him. Eugene got out of the way. William didn't see it coming and got gored right into the stomach by this boar and fell right into Abhartach's grave. Now, as you pointed out, Abhartach's grave is full of stone and sharp fucking pieces of wood and all that around it. He fell right into sharp stone. Okay. So on top of getting the damage from the gore from the front, his head, his body, everything hit the stone behind him. Now, this is what's fucked up, right? And this is why Abhartach's grave is so legendary. And this is, again, truth. You can go check this out. when William's blood hit the ground, now this goes for all liquid, but when it hit the ground, it instantly soaks right into the soil.
Ooh.
The belief being that Abhartach is underneath, and this would happen if any liquid hit the floor, but he's trying to pull the liquid down to see if it's blood. So when it is blood that comes down, he feeds off of that blood, according to the legend. Now, in the aftermath of all this, it kind of changes the dynamic for the likes of Eugene and stuff like that, who, seeing the mortality of his friend, thinks, right, we were talking about future at this point. I got to get my shit together. Life is precious. It's brief. It can end at any moment. I need to cop the fuck on.
Yeah.
I'm now in adulthood. It's time for me to get a job. It's time for me to get to start a family and all that other kind of nonsense.
Yes.
And on the other side, the Baugh family weren't taking this well at all, obviously, because he was an only child.
Yeah.
William was an only child. His father, George, and his mother, Pauline, I believe.
I think so.
I'll confirm that in a second because it's written here in a minute. But he obviously took it hard. I mean, what could you do? And for George, it's almost like he started using Abhartach's grave as almost like a pilgrimage for himself, because their home was actually pretty close to Abhartach's grave to begin with.
Yeah.
But that's where he'd go to, you know, remember his son.
Yes. So even before the tragic death of William Baugh, the land which housed Abhartach's grave was said to be cleared and dug up to make way for a bypass road that would see the village of 6 Mile Hill become even more remote than it already was, much to the dismay of the already struggling businesses in the area. One who had been against the bypass to begin with, but was now hell-bent against it, was George Baugh, father of William and the local mortician. Before, George was against the knocking of Abhartach's grave due to the effect it would have on the local economy. Now, with sentimental attachment to the land, he was about to prove he would go to any and all lengths to prevent the necessary work from going ahead.
This is a hot topic in Ireland the whole time, because bypasses seem to be happening a lot now. To try and make the country more accessible. I suppose to move from one end of the country to the other end of the country more accessible. I mean, just to give you an idea, when we were kids, to go from Kerry, where we live now, to the capital, Dublin, would be a 5-hour drive. Now you'd knock it out in 3.5 hours, depending on traffic. You know, and that's all down to these bypasses. But the opposite, the downside to a bypass is all these small businesses in these smaller towns and villages relied on the tourists passing through to keep their economy afloat, to keep their businesses afloat, to make a living. So these bypasses, while they make it easier to move around the country, heavily affect these smaller villages to the point where some of them can't even survive. They become non-existent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, like our village here where we live doesn't have any real connection in that sense, but because there is no traffic going through our village, because we're not attached to any main road, all we have here is a post office, a shop, a petrol station that we're never really 100% sure if it's going to survive or not, and another small, so 2 shops, one we call the small shop, one we call the big shop, a petrol station, a post office, and 3 pubs.
3 pubs.
Oh, and one of the pubs also acts as
the butchers. And we have a chemist.
And it's also our off license.
Yeah.
All in one. No. And our chemist used to also be our veterinary supplies, but since they went franchise, I don't think they're allowed to do that anymore.
And then there's a takeaway that opens for a few months and then shuts for a few months.
Unfortunately. We only have 2 pubs though. One of the pubs closed down.
What?
Last year, remember?
No, well, we got 3 pubs after that pub.
Oh, we do.
That's it. So we'd had 4 pubs originally.
Like I said, I social drink.
I was in maybe 3 of them. No, 2 of them. I was only ever in 2 of them. I've only ever been in 2 of them.
Yeah, the first weekend we were out here, I was in all of them, and it didn't go well. Anyway, so George, obviously, his state of mind isn't going to be great, and he's visiting this grave fairly regularly. And George starts to have these delusions. and starts to kind of... Oh, you have to remember, at home, things are really fucking stressful. Because his wife, Pauline, is dealing with it by just shutting down. She is borderline catatonic. She's sitting down at home and she can't deal with this. She just shuts the fuck off. George went so far as to prepare the body for... No, he had no choice because he's the only mortician in a small village, but he wanted to. He prepared his son's body. And George got it into his head, because it happened at Abhartach's grave, that possibly he could, I don't know, somehow bring his son back through this fucking grave. I don't know how. You don't really know how a person's mind is working when they're this grief-stricken.
Yeah.
And we're obviously going to see here that he's willing to go to extreme lengths to try and bring his son back, which is what any parent would do. They go to extreme lengths in the thought of bringing their child back. But the reality of it is, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Death is final. That's it. And unfortunately for them, that's the case they're in now. And William's gone and George has to try and deal with this shit.
And it wasn't just George and Pauline affected by William's death. The loss of his friend hit Eugene hard too. So the usually directionless young man had decided in a fit of survivor's guilt that he had to pull up his socks and get his life on track, finally accepting his father's offer to come and work with him as his contracting firm. First job, clear out Abhartach's grave for the bypass.
No. He didn't want to do this job, but the thing about it was he didn't want to leave. He really wanted to prove to his father that he could do this. So obviously he has the superstition, but he also has the connection to Abhartach's grave, and he's not exactly crazy about the idea of knocking it over, but he wants to prove to his father he can do this job. The other workers on the site are also similarly have an aversion against knocking this over. Like, you know, they don't want to. So Abhartach's grave basically is stones piled on top of each other, and then you have this tree hanging over it. So they didn't want to knock this over, just because of superstition, and a little bit because their friend had fucking died there.
Well, yeah, there's that.
But when Eugene kind of brings this to his father, they get into a huge argument, and out of frustration and anger, and again to prove his father wrong that he can do this job, Eugene comes barging out of the, what would you call it, the little hut that they have,
the foreman,
kind of like a prefab, one of these little prefab fucking things they put down for temporary
building works.
Yeah, or you'd have your little canteen and little offices and stuff like that.
Beside the porta potty.
So Eugene comes raging out of there, jumps into the digger, drives right over, knocks the shit out of the grave and pulls the tree out of the ground.
Okay.
All's good. Everyone's happy. Kind of. And they fuck off for the day. And they come back the next day. And the stones are back piled on top of each other. No, they think this has to be a prank. Someone's fucking with us just because of where it is and what it is. And there's a big contingency of the village who are against this bypass that are going to do this as a protest anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So a night watchman is hired. And he's not exactly again, it's a small village. You have a small pool of people to pick from. The night watchman was the local drunk. Yeah. And it was give him a nag and a whiskey, tell him to sit there, and if he sees anything, he's to call the police. Next day they come in. Dalman is back standing up. Night watchman is nowhere to be fucking seen. So they're like, fuck me, this is bullshit. Is he in on it? Or is he just gone off and or did he go off fucking get drunk and fuck off and not give them the chance to come in and rebuild the Dalman? Yeah. I don't know. So that's what's in their head.
Now, until this point, it was believed kids were responsible for the nightly reconstruction of the grave. But with the watchman on the missing list, suspicion began to rise and belief that something more nefarious might be at play began to play in the minds of the local villagers.
No. This is where the crime comes in. This is where the true crime comes in. Mm-hmm. Because the person behind all of it was George Baugh. Baugh. George got it into his head that if he could scare enough locals, that this would put a stop to, or at least superstition might slow down the building of this grave, or they might build around it, or there might be some way of scaring the people into doing it. He was terrified that losing this grave will be him losing any chance he has of reuniting with his son or connecting with his son beyond the grave or whatever was playing in his head at the time.
Yeah.
But George went out there with the intention to scare people away. And then when the night watchman showed up, George took it a step too far.
Mm-hmm.
George decided that if you're not going to believe me by building the dolmen up every day, and if you're not going to believe that the Abhartach is coming back and rebuilding his grave every day, well, then I'm going to make you think Abhartach is free because you left the grave down. And George killed the night watchman. Murdered the night watchman. Thinking he's only a fucking drunk anyway. No one's going to really miss him. And he wasn't wrong because when the police turned up the next day, they thought, first of all, they thought he was just off on a bender and paid absolutely no attention because he was missing at first. He didn't just leave the body lying out. He didn't display the body. He just had the body go missing for a while, but he put it in a position where he knew it would be found later on. So the police fobbed it off. Now, when I say the police, it's a village. One police. That's all we have. We only have one cop in this fucking village too. That's it. So this one cop, it was like, lads, it's fucking Charlie. Charlie goes missing the best part of the time anyway. Yep. Fuck it, he'll show up, don't worry about it. And leaves the situation. A few hours later, he's called back. Well, he wasn't called back. And I'll tell you why he wasn't called back in a few minutes. But eventually, Eugene and fellow worker Michael Hugh found the body of what? Hoff.
That's how I'd say it. It's Hoff. Yeah.
H-O-U-G.
Yeah, because there's Goff as well. It's G-O-U-G-H or G-O-F-F.
Well, Eugene and Michael found the body of watchman Charlie Hart at the work site later that evening. So yeah, do you want to take it from there?
Francie, afraid of the job being shut down for a long investigation, suggested that no one would miss the man and that they should cover it up.
This is something that is common. Like, I mean, if there was like historic stuff found, like if they started digging and they suddenly came across this great historic find, most construction guys and most people in charge of the construction project or who have money invested in construction project would be like, you fucking bury that shit deep quickly.
Because one thing you know yourself could lead to so many more things, and then it goes into the hundreds
what it basically
of
means
thousands.
Is if we find something here and we declare it, then archaeologists have to come in here and go through every fucking inch of this place before they let us proceed, which will cost us millions.
It's not just archaeology. Was it the bypass around Tara was stopped for a snail? Do you remember it was like a really
fossil,
no, a live snail, a breed of snail that was very, very rare. I think it was past Tara. It was definitely somewhere up that region of Ireland, and they stopped work on the bypass because of this little species of snail.
So I mean, like, to
anything
construction worker or an investor who doesn't give two shits about culture or animal or species and stuff like that, the idea will be put it aside. You saw nothing. Forget about it.
Exactly.
Because this is going to cost us millions if we stop, and it could take years before we can get things moving again. Yep. So George's plan was to lead the police to the body so the construction would have to be stopped. His thought was, if I don't scare you, at least the body will slow things down and give me time to make plans for my next steps.
Exactly.
The only thing is, George isn't thinking in the right state of mind. George isn't thinking right. George is gone mentally. Exactly. He confronts when it isn't declared that Charlie Hart is dead. When no one goes looking and there is no investigation, George confronts Eugene and Francie at the worksite and says, "Hey, I know he fucking died here. You guys got to come with me."
Yes.
And he brings them back to the house and, pretty much like a fucking Bond villain, admits to everything and tells them what he had planned to do. But again, Francie is terrified of this being shut down, and he's been friends with George for a long time. And Francie's a very Irish man. Can't deal with his emotions. Can't deal with awkward situations. So when George is sitting there bawling his eyes out, saying, "I just missed my son, I fucked up," Francie is awkwardly just being like,
sure, you'll be alright.
It's alright. Sure,
we'll make a cup of tea.
We'll bury it all. We'll say nothing. We'll forget about it. Huh? No big deal. And that was the plan.
Yeah.
that's basically what they had planned to do. They were going to cover it up between the three of them, and they were just going to pretend like this never happened.
But what George wasn't counting on was that his wife Pauline had snapped worse than he had, and with the grief of losing her only child and the pain of watching her husband go more and more unhinged, she had sat silently in her armchair in the living room since William's death, borderline catatonic. So it was very unexpected when, while the men plotted out their cover-up plan, she stood up, took the gun George had out handy since his original crime, and shot him dead in front of the Moffat men. She then took a knife she had resting by her side and cut her own throat directly after, as all the men could do was watch.
It's crazy, isn't it? How could you cut your own fucking throat? It just seems so unnatural. You know, like every
would have to have
instinct
snapped.
Every instinct in your body is going to start. Whatever about putting a gun to your head, it's just pulling a trigger. It's different.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of do that and pull the trigger and think, oh shit, and then it's too late. But that takes thought. That takes force. It takes, intent to do something like that. Now, again, this isn't like America. This wasn't like she had a handgun fucking handy and popped them. This dude had his hunting rifle out. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Now, if you believe the official story, that was the end of it. Mm-hmm. But this is Ireland.
Yes.
And the official story is just what makes the papers. And over time, eventually, all tragic events turn into epic tales, just like they did with the start of our tale today. We talked about all these epic stories and we said ourselves, these were probably stories about great warriors, great soldiers that got inflated over time. Because us Irish, if there's one thing we like to do,
it's a story.
We love to tell a story. Yeah. And over time, eventually, all tragic events will start to be filled with otherworldly figures, a magical intervention. So while papers read local grieving mortician murders drunk, then dies in murder-suicide event with his wife, the Moffats had a different twist on things, and it was all related to the lost leg of Francie Moffat. Now again, like I said, we got a dark humor here, and we got a dark way of dealing with things. And sometimes Irishmen, we struggle to deal with emotional topics or traumatic topics correctly. Correctly being talking about them directly and saying, this is what happened, this is how I'm feeling about it, I need help getting over it. Our way of dealing with it is, we'll go have a few points and we will take the tragic story and turn it into a funny, epic story to keep people happy. And so when people ask you, oh, what happened, you don't have to relive the trauma by telling them what actually happened. You get to just come up with a fairy tale and have a bit of fun. Exactly. And that's exactly what happened here. So what really happened to Francie's leg was, in a work accident, he fell through a trapdoor of a barn, a big barn. Damaged the leg so severely that when he went to hospital, there was nothing they could do to save it, and it had to be amputated. And he had been on a what do they call them again? The fake legs? Words not coming to me. A prosthetic leg for some time now.
Okay.
What the Moffat say happened is completely fucking different. They claim that Francie lost the leg battling Abhartach with Eugene, and that he lost it in the fight with Abhartach, and it will hold some very heavy significance a little later what they did with this leg.
Yes. So claiming that William's blood had soaked into the grave and woke Abhartach, the Moffats claimed that in death, William had become a blood-hungry vampire, and in an attempt to feed his son, George had killed Charlie to keep his son fed. They claimed that William killed and fed on his parents before eventually being put down by the Moffats themselves. But that's not all. They claimed that by knocking the dolmen on top of the ancient vampire's grave, they had freed him from his binds, and that William was just the start of his modern reign of terror. They said that Francie lost the leg battling Abhartach, and that after trying decapitation and sunlight, which are traditionally an easy means for killing vampires, and being short the usual stake required to stab the black heart of the beast, Eugene took the severed leg of Francie and drove it through the demon's chest, finally putting him down after a long fought battle.
Fuck yeah, stick the leg in the chest. That's what you do.
Absolutely. I wonder if he pointed it to be a
Don't put it on ice. Don't put it on ice so we can reattach it. Kill the vampire with it.
Or drive it through the vampire, then reattach it, and then you might get some powers.
Now look, we were going to say it right here. Yeah. There is no real basis for these claims. There's no proof, evidence, or even a newspaper article about this outside of what these two have claimed. And this story has kind of travel the country because of it. To the point that their part of Derry is now not known as County Derry anymore. It's known as County Hell. And these two are the boys from County Hell, and they like to tell their stories. Like I said, it was just their way of dealing with the trauma. It was their way of dealing with death, murder, suicide. They'd seen a lot. They'd been through a lot. And their idea of dealing with this was this way. They actually got off pretty lightly when it came to the legality of the whole thing, because before they had actually went so far as to cover up Charlie's death completely, you know, they kind of been caught by George for not reporting it, and they hadn't actually taken any serious steps towards criminality just yet. So they kind of got off with a slap in the wrist. I think it was obstruction of justice, and they got suspended sentences and all this because of what they had been through. Now they claim that Abhartach is buried. They said that they battled him around their own home, and that the trapdoor that Francie fell through originally to lose his leg, that Abhartach fell through that trapdoor himself, and that when they put him through the leg through his chest, they buried him there again. So he's not in his grave anymore. He is now on their land under a new fresh pile of stone that they had put there themselves. And that's where he is kept to this day, apparently.
Although, according to the Moffats, the location of the vampire is now housed in Eugene's shed, and he'll still bring you down for a tour, if for like a small fee. He also has a nice gift shop to go with it as well, but the tours only run on weekends, as he is now partners with Francie in his construction business.
So it was a coming of age thing for Eugene. He became a man by killing Abhartach.
Exactly. The original grave also still stands, as the bypass work was cancelled, but according to the Moffats, it's only a decoy now to stop anyone from interfering with the real tomb and freeing the deadly beast again. Either way, Abhartach rests again upside down in Derry and under a pile of rocks, where hopefully he'll remain forevermore. And if I was them, I'd sell the rights of that story to a studio.
Fuck yeah. Can you imagine that? That would
be a good make movie. An amazing
Boys
movie.
From County Hell. It sounds like a good movie to me. I'd
go watch it.
So that's it. That's our first Irish tale of the month, and I enjoyed it. Next week we take it a bit more seriously. This was fun. It isn't so much true crime. It's a fun story of what happened in a lot of Irish history and a lot of Irish mythology. Next week, things take a bit of a more serious turn when we start looking at a story that took place in famine times.
The darker side of our history.
And depressing, but it's still something we would like to talk about, because there was a pretty epic tale of revenge that took place at that time, and we're going to try and cover that next week, and we're going to try and talk about that next week. But before we get to next week, we have something special coming this week. This week on the Horrorverse headlines, this Friday, we will be talking to movie writer and director Joe Lamb, who is just released his new movie, The Fetus. Now, strange for us being true crime people to be talking to somebody in a movie capacity, but you know, we will do movies for one night, I suppose, you know. Take a jump out of our real world and into the fake.
Do seriously go check out the movie though.
It's a great movie. We got to watch it this week. It was it's an epic movie. It stars Bill Moseley, who we all know as Chop Top. We all know as Otis Driftwood. It's
the captain in Army of Darkness.
Is it? Really? No way.
Yep, 100%.
It also stars Lauren Lavera, who we all know from fucking Terrifier 2 and 3. Epic fucking movies. Exactly. The reigning Scream Queen, Lauren Lavera. It is a brilliant movie. It is entertaining. It's fucking twisty. There's twists and turns you don't expect. There's comedy you don't expect. The whole movie is just something, one unexpected thing after the other, and it's just, it's a thrill ride from start to finish, and and on top of it, it has some very, very serious and legitimate messages running throughout it about pro-choice, about parenting, about fatherhood, about, you know,
breaking the cycle is one that really stands out to me. Yeah.
It's a really, really, really good movie, and we're going to get to talk to him tomorrow night, and you're going to see it on Friday night. And we're going to try and video it. Definitely going to get the audio up there. The video should be on Patreon, and we're going to give you that for free as well. So it'll be free on Patreon to check out.
We'll try and get it onto...
The audio will be on Spotify for you to listen to on the usual Horrorverse headline. So come back here Friday. It's going to be epic. If you like that and you like this show, then you should go and check out more on Patreon at the Horrorverse Network. There are tons of shows covering true crime, serial killers, ghosts, cryptids, history, apparently movies now, wrestling, and everything else that catches your attention. And that's all there available now for only $5 a month.
Yep. And you can check all it out now with our 7-day free trial. That's Patreon at the Horrorverse Network. And check us out on Instagram at Alive Live Pod and at Amy Rose IAA for news, updates, pictures, reels, and more.
We'll be back next week with more tales from the Horrorverse. It's the Live Alive podcast. All the guts and gore with none of the gills. See you all next time. Same Alive Live time. Same Horrorverse channel. Okay, love you. Bye-bye.
Hey, lady. Love you. Bye-bye.